Hi there, and welcome to Cosmic Soul Alignment. My guest today is Eli Bliliuos, founder of the NYC Hypnosis Center, and he's been trained by Dr. Brian Weiss and the Michael Newton Institute. And Eli specializes in past life regression, life between lives, and even regressions to the womb and beyond this planet. And his work helps people uncover soul memories that can be deeply healing and transformative. So, Ellie, welcome, and let's dive right in.
Hi, Dawn. Great to be here with you.
Thank you for agreeing to join me. I am really looking forward to this conversation. So just as a general introduction then, tell us a little bit about your personal journey. You know, what initially drew you to the field of hypnosis and regression therapy?
Sure. So when I was in my late teens, I had a loss, family loss, and I just sought out hypnosis just as a random thing to try. And it was more of like an intuitive thing, just felt the urge to go and do it. And I had a profound experience. I mean, I was able to connect in that moment in time with the soul of the person who passed away, one of them anyway. And it just left a profound effect on me. And later on in life, I had the opportunity to study hypnosis. And that actually came about because I was traveling overseas, visiting a family in Finland. And I just became ill. And my aunt, who was a Reiki practitioner, did some Reiki on me.
Mm.
And I had this amazing experience. I started to see things and experience things as she was doing Reiki on me, and totally unexpected, by the way. And I said, oh my goodness, this is something I have to look into. And so I returned to New York after that trip. I happened to find a Reiki course. So I took that course, became a Reiki master. And then that course led me to a hypnosis course that was being held at the same location as the Reiki training that I'd taken. I said, wow, I'd really like to do this. And I took that course. And after I took the course, I started to practice. I figured maybe a couple of times a week after work or something, that sort of thing, And before I knew it, I had a full-time practice within 6 months to a year, somewhere in between there. I had a full-time practice. And when I tell you totally unexpected. I just figured I'd do it on the side. It'd be fun to do. It'd be interesting. And just turned into this full-time thing. And I'm very grateful that I went down that path, because that's, I consider past life regression, life between lives regression, my calling, my purpose. And I've witnessed some amazing things facilitating these sessions. And that's how I sort of got from where I started to where I am now.
Well, hopefully we get to hear some of these experiences. I'm really interested to learn a little bit more. But can you tell us then, what does life between lives regression mean to you on a personal level?
Life between lives regression is when you regress and experience memories from the afterlife, from that space between lives. And in that space, you typically, almost always, I should say, have contact with your spirit guides and learn about your soul history, the many lives you've lived, why you've chosen some of those lives, your soul group, and very often your soulmate as well, too. It's the opportunity to understand why you've made some of the decisions you've made as a soul, and why you've decided to incarnate into different, bodies and different times. And it's a very, very profound experience, because in that space, as you're connecting with your spirit guides and other souls, it's just such a profound experience, because you recognize that we're just, these are our costumes in this lifetime. And, this is what I've decided to look like. And this is the place I've decided to be in this lifetime. But we've had many, many different experiences over different lifetimes that have helped to sort of shape and grow our souls.
To give us an explanation then about a soul group from your perspective.
Sure. So there are groups of souls that we continue to incarnate with. We sort of like have this mission, if you will, to sort of grow and evolve. Okay. But in most cases, we're sort of similar in terms of our path, in terms of how our growth has taken place. And so we agree to sort of be in each other's lives in different roles. So maybe in this lifetime, my wife is my wife, but in a past lifetime, she was my mother or my sister or a friend or a business partner. But we agree to sort of incarnate in these different roles so we can both as souls or collectively as souls learn and grow from the experience.
So you can support each other.
Exactly.
Yeah, when I first learned about, soul groups and, you could be interacting with the same souls in different roles, that was kind of freaky to me. That was a little bit strange.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Have you met your own soul group?
I'm sorry?
Have you met your own soul group?
I have, yes.
You have?
I have. I've done regressions many times and LBLs. That's the abbreviation for Life Between Lives.
Mm-hmm.
LBL regressions many times. And so I've identified, various souls in my soul group, family members, my wife, some friends as well too. So yeah, I've identified those souls in the soul group. And that's a pretty common thing to do when you experience a Life Between Lives regression.
And what about some of your clients? Does it happen regularly, or is it just occasionally that they find their soul group?
No, it's actually pretty common because what typically happens is, I'm going to take a step back if I can. So normally doing a Life Between Lives regression, the first step is to experience memories from the womb, which we'll talk about later, then experience a recent past life, and then from there, that space between lives. And when they transition into that space between lives, very often members of their soul group are waiting to greet them. So the idea is that when we transition, when we pass away, those souls are there waiting for us to welcome us. They're going to be happy to see us, and to sort of, if there's any confusion during that process of transitioning, they'll help us with that as well too. And I will say that the spirit guides are there as well too when you transition.
Yeah. Do you have clients, or have you had clients that really don't believe that there's life after death?
Yes.
How do you handle that?
Well, yeah, it's a very good question, actually. So I do clinical hypnosis as well, too. I'm going to give you one example. I do clinical hypnosis, and I had somebody come in, and this person did not believe in, afterlife, did not believe in past lives, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I often do regressions, current life regressions, to identify what triggers various challenges in people's lives and to help them let it go. And so I did the same thing with this client. And this person, a woman, she spontaneously went to a past life. And, I did some techniques to help her to release what she was holding on to from that past life. But at the end of the session, she goes, I don't believe that's true. I said, well, just look at it as a metaphor. You don't have to believe it. If it helps you, that's really what's the real value in this session, right? So don't worry if you believe it or not. But ultimately, I really care about if you experience the positive change you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, she did. And it wasn't really important to me, and probably not to her, that she believed it or not, just so long as she had that positive change in her life. So yeah, that's the way I handle it.
Yeah, I think going in with an open mind as well. Yeah, you may not believe something, but just go with the flow and see what happens.
Absolutely.
And I think that's sometimes when you let go, I think sometimes that's when the real magic can happen.
Absolutely. It's funny you say that, because very often clients who seek me out for past life regression or Life Between Lives, and very often they do a past life regression first, they always tell me, I'm a little skeptical. I'm not sure. Am I going to, that whole, that's I hear that a lot in the beginning of the session. And I always tell them, just suspend disbelief and analyze it later. You can always analyze it and decide what you think of it later. And of course, more often than not, they have such a profound experience that, they finish a session feeling very differently than they did when they started.
Mm-hmm. Because it's been an experience, they think, wow, I wasn't expecting that at all.
Exactly.
And just tell me, actually, because I've been regressed a few times. I love it. It comes up with a whole ton of stuff for me. I just love it. Do your clients have any recollection of the actual experience at the time, or are they being a bit like me and don't remember too much?
So you don't remember too much when you do a past life regression, is that correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
So that is very uncommon, believe it or
not. Really?
So yeah. So
I'm not really common. I don't go with the flow with things like that. I'm very different.
So I will tell you that I've been doing this for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in my 20 years, I've had 2 people who didn't remember their past lives after
Wow.
the session. Now, I do record it regardless, because
Yes.
whether you remember it vividly or you don't remember it at all, you probably want a recording of that session so you can review it, years later, just to sort of go through it and just see what that, just to remind yourself. So I do record it, but it is fairly uncommon. Most people remember most, if not all, of what they experience. So,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
so you're unique is really what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's a good word. I prefer that. Yes, very unique. Absolutely. So revisiting a past life then, how can that help somebody heal emotional issues or maybe physical issues? Does that,
Sure. I'll give you a couple of examples. So,
please?
I had a client who was suffering with severe anxiety, and this person had a sort of unhealthy attachment. When I say unhealthy, I mean overly protective of her child. Okay, to the point where she recognized it was sort of, overly. She was too protective. And so I regressed her, did a past life regression with her. And sure enough, she went to a past life memory where her son in this lifetime, her daughter in another lifetime, um, uh, you know, she died as the parent in that lifetime. And she left this very young girl all alone. Not purposely, of course, right?
Yeah.
But she held on to this guilt of dying, even though it was no fault of her own. But she was as she was dying, she was like, oh my God, my daughter's going to be by herself at such a young age.
Mm-hmm.
And that one experience led to that dynamic, that feeling that she can never be too overprotective, because she'd somehow wronged her daughter in that lifetime. So she made her become overprotective in her current life, and causes all this anxiety to build up within her. But by gaining that new perspective and understanding where it came from, she was able to let go of that anxiety. And, her relationship with her son changed to the point where she was still protective, and she was a good mom and everything else, but she wasn't overprotective anymore. She wasn't afraid that something bad was going to happen to her son. That's one example.
So she was able to, shed that vibration then,
Exactly.
the guilty vibration. Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But very often we hold on to things from past lives,
Yeah.
and they impact us now.
It,
People have fears and phobias that stem from past lifetimes. So, I've had people who've died in plane crashes in past lives, and they have a fear of flying. But when you go back and you experience that memory in regression, there are techniques to help the client let that go, to realize, okay, that was then, and this is now. Okay, and it's 2 totally different experiences. And so by doing that, and by getting that new perspective, they're able to lead a healthier and happier life.
Did you know that by the time you go back to your 9th set of grandparents, you are carrying the vibrations of over 2,000 souls?
That actually makes sense if you're going back 9 generations.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
people wonder why we've got so much that we're dragging around with us right now.
that's
That's just 9 sets of grandparents. It's amazing, isn't it? But when you
yeah,
think about that, it blows your mind, really.
it does. And I've done regressions where people have gone back to the caveman days. Think about how far back that was. Okay, and I've had clients. I'm in a cave. I think there's a fire in here, and they realize and it's pretty amazing if you think about it. You can go that far back, and you think about all the various lifetimes that we've had, and people think, well, I've had maybe 2 or 3 or 4. No, in some cases you can have hundreds of lifetimes. It depends on the soul.
Yeah.
In fact, the more lifetimes you have, the more you've probably grown as a soul, because you've had all these different experiences, both positive and negative, to learn from. And I often get asked, well, I feel like I'm having such a tough lifetime, whether it's financial or emotional or relational, whatever it might be. And while it's easy for me to say this, I often say, well, we chose these various challenges, and so did you, because there's a value in having a lifetime where you're rich, a lifetime when you're poor, a lifetime when you're healthy, a lifetime when you might have a disease of some sort, or you know. So there's always a value in experiencing those things. Of course, it's difficult to accept that when you're going through something difficult, but we choose our lifetimes ahead of time.
We signed the contracts, didn't we? To
Absolutely.
have
Absolutely.
a very wide-ranging, various experiences with different things. That's what helps us to spiritually grow, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And, we were talking about life between lives regressions before. Part of that, very often, is a scene with your guide where the soul is actually looking at 3 or 4 different opportunities to incarnate and the various challenges they're going to experience. So it's almost like they're being shown important snippets of those lifetime experiences, and so that they can choose. Choose a lifetime where they'll be able to learn whatever experience they're going to experience in that lifetime.
And do you believe, because I believe that obviously there's only the present moment. There's no past really, the future's not here yet, so there's only the present moment. So would you then use the phrase past lives or concurrent lives? I think we're told, or we're kind of grown up, that there's past lives. It's all past life regression work that's going on. But to me, I see everything all happening at once.
So yeah, that is true, and I agree with that. Actually, I agree that everything's there is no past, present, or future. It's just everything's happening, if you will, at the same time concurrently. I agree with that. I think that the term past lives is just easier for people to sort of say, okay, that was something I experienced before, right? So it's just easier for them to grasp. I'm not saying that people can't grasp the concept. Certainly they can, but I do agree with you that time, in my opinion, time is an illusion. It's just, we're all experiencing things at the same time. So
Yeah, and past lives is just what's really been going about, and everybody absorbs it and thinks that's what it is. Yeah. I know that I've been regressed several times, like I had said, and in every, and I'm just wondering, I'm wanting to get on the topic of patterns here, but every single regression I had, I was a healer in whatever lifetime it was, and I've maybe had 8 or 10 regressions to date, and I've always been a healer in whichever planet, whichever lifetime. Do you find that that's very common?
to a certain extent, yes. So yeah, I mean, very often we go down this path as a soul, and probably, I'm going to guess now for a second, maybe your soul path was healing. And so that was what you decided to sort of take up, whether it be as a cave person or as a Native American Indian. I'm making this up, of course. I have no idea. We don't know what past lives you've lived. But yeah, that's common. If I could touch on that for a second, I've had many clients. I say many, a number, I should say, of clients who were witches in past lives. And they were either burned at the stake or they were oppressed in some way, shape, or form. And very often they have this urge to heal people now, but they're afraid to do so because of that experience. Because back then people just, looked at that as, bad magic or evil or whatever it is, and however they described it back then. And they were oppressed, they were killed, they were whatever, discriminated against. And so very often I'll help them let that go so they can, get back on track in their life now and do something that they know is right for them and they feel intuitively drawn to.
That's me, definitely.
Okay.
I was, killed a few times at the stake or burned or, whatever, horrible things, but it's so lovely to be able to let that weight go, to allow it just to leave you, isn't
Absolutely.
it? It feels light, you feel really light after it, and you just know that that's not going to be a problem anymore. But I absolutely understand where you're coming from. These type of experience that we have previously experienced, it really it keeps us stuck, I suppose, for want of better words. It can keep us stuck at the minute. Like you said, they're too scared to move on. That was me for quite some time until I realised it's like I got to the right lifetime where that was a really big issue and I had quite the trauma. And it was almost like a weight falling out of my stomach. It was just such a strange but a wonderful feeling. Yeah. Have you
Yeah,
had
very
anything like
often.
that? Mhm.
Yeah, very often it's a very kinesthetic experience. It's a very,
Yeah.
not just emotional, but also physical experience. You say you're dropping something out of your stomach, and that's pretty
Yeah.
common during a regression. So
And have you been able to help anybody with physical issues?
I have. So I've had people who've experienced, were experiencing pain in one shape or form, and that stems from an injury in a past lifetime. They sort of hold on to it, and there are different reasons why. Sometimes, if people experience a serious injury right before death or as they're dying, um, they can hold on to that because at the moment of death, they're so focused on that injury, on that, and they're about to die, obviously, from the injury, but they can focus so much on that they carry it forward. And I've had experiences with clients who, by regressing them to identify what triggered that original, I'm going to call it an injury, they can let that go as well too, and be free of the discomfort or pain that they're experiencing in their current life. Yeah, I've done a couple of those as well too.
Okay. All right. Um, some other core themes. What are some other core themes that come up when you're regressing clients?
Oh, there's quite a bit. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about relationship
Mm,
challenges. Okay, so sometimes you're in a room with somebody and it just doesn't, something not right about that person to you, and it could be a family member. It could be just, you don't know why, but you're on guard. And I had a client like this who couldn't be in the same room as a family member. She just felt, oh my God, I don't like this person. I don't know why, but I just don't like this person. And this person came to see me for regression, not for this purpose. This wasn't her goal. But sure enough, she went to a memory where this person in a different body, of course, wronged her. In this case, stole from her. Okay, betrayed her, and she held on to that. And then she recognized that soul at a subconscious level in her current lifetime and was still hesitant. But after the session, the whole dynamic changed because she realized that was then, this is now. We agreed to play that role in that past life, but now we have a different dynamic. We have a different. We're going to help each other as souls in different ways, and so she just let that go. So that's one example. Very often, people seek me out because they have had a loss, a husband, a wife, what have you. And they're just looking to somehow, understand and, just sort of understand, is there something more beyond this lifetime? And
Are
very
they
often,
okay?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so very often they regress to past lives with that spouse, maybe in a different role, of course. And just that in and of itself, just that can help them to sort of, just feel better about the transition of their spouse. Realizing, okay, this is not the last time I'm going to see this soul, this person. I'm going to see them again. I'm going to have other experiences with this person. It's not the end. So that's very comforting for most people. And in that life between lives space, they can connect with that soul and actually interact with them. And that's an extremely profound experience. So it's almost like seeing a spouse you haven't seen in 3 months who's been traveling. It's the same idea. When you transition to that space between lives and that soul is waiting for you, it's almost like this profound and emotionally beautiful experience that they have reconnecting with that soul. So it can be an extremely profound experience.
What are some of the messages that the people that have transitioned actually give your clients? What's the sort of things that they say?
Yeah, so of course it varies, but very often they tell them the most important thing is, I'm okay. I'm fine. I know it sounds like a very obvious thing because you've had some of these experiences, but when they hear that, it's more telepathic. It's not something they hear often. It's a more telepathic communication, by the way. But when they realize that, and this is being communicated to them, it's such a relief. Sometimes it's about forgiveness. sometimes about, they may feel guilty about something, and they communicate there's no need to feel guilty. That's very important, by the way, because in that space, there is no judgment. There is no, I wronged you, you wronged. It's just, we played a role, and this is the role we played. I'm so looking forward for you, to reconnect with you and for you to rejoin us again. So it's just such a profound thing.
And that obviously facilitates the emotional release as well. So I bet you have a lot of people, crying in tears and just letting it go. No, it's wonderful.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, whether it's a past life regression or life between lives regression, it's a very emotional experience. So whether they're seeing a grandfather or when they were connecting with a grandmother, grandfather, spouse, what have you, it's a very emotional experience, of course.
Yes. Okay, now's a good time for a quick break, but hang with us and we'll be right back with Eli. And welcome back to Cosmic Soul Alignment. I am here with Eli, and we are talking about, life between lives regressions. And Eli, if it's okay, I'd like to talk about regression to the womb. So can you tell us what that is and what it means to you?
Sure. So when I do a life between lives regression, as I mentioned before, what typically happens first is a client will regress to the womb. Before they were born, and in that, in the womb, it's not a very visual experience because very often their eyes don't work yet, but it's a very kinesthetic experience. Okay, so they're able to sort of feel their body. They normally feel a very floating sensation because you're sort of floating in the womb. They get a sense as to how their mom is feeling because they're connected to their mom in that way. They can hear things. They can hear conversations between their parents from the womb. They know how they're feeling physically as well as emotionally, and they'll share that. If there's any trauma during childbirth, that'll come up. So in other words, if it was a difficult delivery, they might re-experience that a little bit. And they'll do that not because I wanted to experience a traumatic experience, but more so to let it go. So very often we hold on true to traumatic experiences, including difficult deliveries. So that might come up as well too. But in the womb, you are still sort of in the soul state. So it's very close to being in a life between lives space. And very often, a soul will join with the body maybe in the first month or 2 or 3 of the pregnancy, usually month 3 or later, actually. And so we can ask questions about, when did you join? Do you go back and forth? When I say back and forth, I mean, do you go back to the life between lives space, or do you stay in the body the whole time in the womb? And very often souls go back and forth. And so,
Interesting.
yeah. And so in that space, they also know or can know what they're going to experience in the lifetime. In other words, what basic challenges they're going to experience, whether it be physical, emotional, financial, whatever it might be. So they're very close to being in the soul state in the womb. And so it's a very kinesthetic experience. They can hear the mother's things like their mother's heartbeat. They can hear that. Normally they're very warm. They can tell if everything's okay, if their body's contorted in any way or not. And those are the types of things they can sort of experience in the womb.
Mm-hmm. I know that I was a difficult birth. I apparently was delivered by forceps, a very difficult time for my mother. I did not realise that that could cause such trauma with the child as well as the mother. And once you clear that, it makes such a difference.
Yeah, people don't realize that we hold on to so many things, including from childbirth. They just don't realize it. And, who would even think about that? They just think they probably don't have any memories of it in most cases, right? Conscious memories, I mean.
Yeah.
But people often feel like a weight is lifted when you release a trauma, right? It's almost like you just feel better. You feel lighter in a way. So there's always a value in doing a regression, whether it's utero or past life or life between lives. There's always a value in it. And very often it's clearing something from the past, gaining some new perspective.
You actually see adults, once they've had the regression, from the womb, they can actually move forward then feeling better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. And some people, it's interesting, not in the womb, but some people, whether they're regressed childhood, whether it's a past life, their voice can sometimes change when they're experiencing regression as well too. So, and I bring that up because I'll never forget, I did a regression once in utero regression, and we went through the whole childbirth scene, and this person, the client, their voice changed and they sounded like a little child at one point. They sounded like they were talking, very basic words. I mean, their whole voice changed, and I thought it was fascinating to sort of witness that. So it was interesting to go from the womb in the soul state to a child, to a newborn child anyway. Yeah.
There you go. Wow. Okay. I want to talk about planets, lives on other planets, because this fascinates me as well. I've had a few very interesting regressions about that. So can you give us the common characteristics then of these types of experiences?
So there are many different planets out there that we souls can inhabit and incarnate on. Some of them we don't have bodies, which is some are like water planets where you could be some sort of a fish or amphibian. So there are all these really interesting lifetimes we can lead. Some of them could be more like a bird planet, if you will. But I've had clients incarnate, regress to these various types of planets, and it's interesting to hear them talk about it. But I'll give you one example about a client who spontaneously regressed to a different planet, not expecting, by the way, for this to be the case. So they came in with a fear, and it was a phobia. I think it was of heights. It was of heights. And this person regressed back to a planet where the best way I can describe it is the form was sort of like a bird. They were able to fly. Okay.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And at one point, they fell ill, and they literally fell to the surface of this planet and died that way.
Oh.
And that caused that fear of heights. But this person had no, belief in other planets and regressions and that sort of thing. But yet after the session, they no longer had the fear of heights. So, but we choose to incarnate on different planets as well too, to experience those environments, to experience those dynamics with other souls on that planet. So it does vary a lot. Perhaps you could share about your experience with it. You said you had a couple of those as well too.
Yes, I've had a few. I can't remember the name of the planet now, but it was one of the planets in Pleiades system. And I have always felt and this might be useful to some people listening, I don't know. I've always felt like I didn't belong here. There was something, I could not put my finger on it. It just didn't feel right here. I didn't feel like I was in the right place. My mind was always somewhere else, and the one regression I got, it's because I was so happy on this other planet. Everything was incredibly high vibrational. There was no wars, there was no problems with money, there was absolutely nothing that we have here in this physical realm. Um, and everything just fell into place for me at that time. When I understood that that's why I didn't have this feeling of belonging here, was because I was so much happier in that other place. And I think that just, I don't know, I'm there at the same time. I think that made me feel a little bit better.
Absolutely.
Mm.
It's nice to go to a planet or be in a space where there's none of that conflict, right? There's
Oh
no,
yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of, I'll call it negative energies on this planet. And so there's conflict and things like that. But that's not true in other planets and some other planets, I should say, right? And it's a really unique experience to have and to realize it doesn't have to be this way. And so I imagine you felt also like a weight was lifted when you were done with that regression as well, too.
Massive, yes, yes. It was as if, that last piece of the jigsaw had just been put in. Yeah. Because I had felt disconnected for all my life, really. I had this disconnection. I just couldn't put my finger on it at all. So that was a great thing for me. It really was. It made me feel so much better.
I actually had a client who was abducted. And he came to me for a very specific reason and nothing to do with regression, nothing to do with past life, nothing to do with abduction, nothing to do with that. But sure enough, he regressed to a very young age in this current life.
Mm-hmm.
And he was abducted is a strong word, but he was taken up to a ship. And he held on to that experience. And even though they didn't hurt him in any way, he was very fearful of the experience. And he had, repressed that memory consciously. But after the session was over, everything changed for him. I mean, it was amazing because he came in, it was actually a sports related session where he wanted to be able to improve his performance. And sure enough, after the session, he did a total 180. He was able to sort of, to be more competitive and everything else. He was in a fighting sport, or he is in a fighting sport, I should say. And so he was able to let that go, which I thought was pretty amazing.
Yeah, that is great. I'm just wondering if regressions to other planets, do they bring forward different kinds of wisdom compared to somebody that you're regressing that's maybe regressed to a previous life on this planet?
Absolutely, because on this planet, in my opinion, again, with all the negative energies that we encounter here and the challenges we face here, when you regress to a different planet, we don't have those. It gives you a whole different perspective about what's important and what's not important, in my opinion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's money, whether it's conflict, whatever it might be, really doesn't have to be this way, in my opinion. And to experience something or a planet where you don't have any of that, of course, there's a wisdom that you gain from that. And plus, there's also a wisdom in terms of how life forms on different planets coexist. It's very much like a collective in some cases. In other words, it's almost like everybody helps everybody, and that's the purpose of that group that they're with on that planet. And so when you experience something like that, you realize, wow, that's probably the way it should be. We should all be working together, as
Yeah, to
opposed to
help each other grow, yeah,
absolutely.
and instead of
So
being in conflict.
that's
Mm-hmm.
right. I mean, it seems like such a simple thing, but yet it's such a difficult thing for most of any of us here on the planet to sort of have.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way it's supposed to be,
Yeah,
in my
it
opinion.
is. Mm-hmm. I agree with your opinion. It's also mine. All right. Broadly speaking, then, for regression, how can regression then support humanity as a collective? Their collective spiritual evolution.
So I believe the more people who get regressed and have, whether it be a past life regression or a life between lives regression, when you have that profound experience and you realize that we're all souls playing a part and we're really all meant to learn and grow from the experience, it has to allow our collective to grow, because what we're doing is we're realizing we shouldn't be in conflict. We should be working. I should be helping my fellow man. I should be helping to rise up to improve, not only as a person, but as a soul and as a community and as a country and as the world. So we have this idea that there's a beautiful idea that there should be no more war, right? Mm-hmm. In order to get there, we have to sort of come together. And I think regressions help people to understand that it's not just about me versus you or you versus me or country versus it's we should be all working together. And that's how I think it sort of raises the consciousness of people and of communities.
And they're aware, they have had an experience that it can't be taken away from them. So they have that knowledge, they have that understanding, therefore they have that wisdom, right? That it is possible to live on a peaceful planet and to be helpful and kind and compassionate to your fellow man. And that would allow them to say, well, I need to change. I've changed because that's what's happened. I'm now aware of all this and I'm going to start spreading that to other people. I absolutely agree that once you've had that experience, you can't take it away. And it changes you forever. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So people who believe on some level that this is our only lifetime might say, well, I have to make the most of it. No, you've got all these lifetimes. And as a soul, you have all these things that you want to accomplish. It's not about this lifetime. I mean, of course, you want to do your best in this lifetime, but it's about our, collectively as souls growing and learning and sort of evolving. And so you can't help but change. I totally agree.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe debunking a myth, a so-called myth that's out there that past life regression isn't safe for everybody. What's your take on that?
I haven't lost anybody yet, is my take. No, I have never had an experience that was in any way negative. And I can't even imagine how it could be, because sometimes people say to me, "Am I going to get stuck? Am I going to be traumatized because of what I experience?" And some people go into it sort of fearful, like, "Oh my God, let's say I experience a death scene or something." And I always explain to them that if you do, that's actually a very good thing, in my opinion, because when you transition from, let's say, a past life to that space between lives, you realize, oh my God, this is what's going to happen when I transition in this lifetime too. So anything that a client experiences during a past life regression, and certainly during Life Between Lives regression, can only help them. That's all it can do. Mm-hmm. And if people like myself who are trained and have done this for many years, there are certain techniques we utilize to help people gain new perspective, to let things go. And that's really, my goal is not just to have the client experience a memory, and that's great, but to help them to sort of release what needs to be released from that memory.
Disconnect the trauma from the memory, right?
Exactly. So, nothing, it can only be a positive outcome from a past life regression. Even if you go to a traumatic experience, you're going to have a positive outcome because you're going to release something.
And also, is this kind of therapy, is it suitable for everyone, or are there some people that can't do this? I can't imagine that there wouldn't be anybody, but
yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say, if somebody is, maybe split personality or something like that, or, that's the only thing I sort of stay away from. But, but I think everybody can gain from having an experience like this. I do. So.
I agree. Okay. So just give us a little bit of an insight then to you're sitting down with a client. How would you prepare somebody to go into a session? Let's say if they're anxious or they're very skeptical about it, how would you kind of ease them into this regression?
So if you're talking, so there's two things I do. I do what I call a pre-talk, what's called a pre-talk, where I explain to them what to expect. Okay. And so, I said it's normal to feel a little anxious because you're sort of, it's a brand new thing. You're telling me I'm going to experience past lives in this session. Wow. So I'm a little nervous. But I was explaining to them that nervousness and excitement are on that same exact line. So, sort of when you go on a roller coaster, you know you're gonna be excited, aren't you? Well, that's what you're going to experience now as well too, and that's okay. Okay, and sometimes, not always, but sometimes people will actually feel anxious because they're going to go to a memory that has triggered some anxiety within them. But again, my goal is what? To have them release it, gain some new perspective. So I explain that to them. I also explain to them that, they're never going to, in my opinion anyway, they're never going to experience something they can't handle in the moment. Okay. So sometimes clients will have past life regression, have a couple of simple past lives, and then they'll decide, okay, 6 months later, whatever it is, that they want to do it again. And in that session, they'll have more of a traumatic past life memory because now they're ready to sort of experience that. And the higher self, the subconscious mind knows what they're ready to handle. Yeah. I've always found this to be the case. So sometimes it'll take a couple of sessions to get to something really important. More often than not, it doesn't need a couple of sessions, but in some cases, that's what it takes. Okay. So I always tell clients, you're never going to experience something you can't handle, and that's reassuring, of course. And then as I got him into hypnosis, I use a combination of confusion and guided imagery to sort of guide them into hypnotic trance. And the confusion sort of helps them sort of tamper down the conscious mind a little bit, sort of, have it go into the background a little bit. And there's wonderful guided imagery that I use and most practitioners use that people find very relaxing. And it's interesting because the one thing almost every client says when they open their eyes, wow, I'm so relaxed. I'm so, a weight's been lifted. And, that's a very, very common feeling that people experience towards the end of the session.
Okay. And have you encountered any clients then who retrieve memories of being part of non-human spiritual realms or entities or from other dimensions?
I have. And very often that'll happen like, second or third session, something like that will come up. But yeah, so they're from different dimensions, and it's interesting the information you can get from those type of regressions. They'll talk about the universe as a whole, and in some cases I've heard some clients say, well, this negativity is going to actually leave the earth in X amount of time, that sort of thing, and that's really the goal. Now whether you subscribe to that belief or not is really not important, but what it is that it's really fascinating if you think about it. So if we're living on this planet, that obviously we have negativity on the planet and negative energies and that sort of thing. And if that's the case, it would be wonderful if we could sort of eliminate that negativity and sort of work as a collective to heal this planet and to heal our souls.
Yeah, I think that's the only way it's going to happen. Yeah,
absolutely.
Everyone to come together and do it at the same time. Yeah, absolutely. So what's the most unexpected or, I suppose, paradigm shifting experience that you've ever had as a facilitator?
Oh, I have to think about that for a moment. Well, I will say I work with somebody who was clinically depressed and had been for most of their life. And they did a past life regression, which was helpful, but they did a Life Between Lives regression. And that's where the change really happened. And it was unexpected to me because I had never had this type of experience before at the time. And when they encountered their soul group and their spirit guides, I could just see a shift right then and there. And just that contact with their other souls who had passed away was it was like a switch was flipped. And after the end of the session, I said, I'll be curious to see what happens with this client. And so I gave this person a call 6 months later, and I said, well, I'm just curious how you're doing. And they said, oh my God, it was life-changing for me. I'm no longer on medication. I no longer have a need for medication. And I'm not saying that happens with every client, but it was just a fascinating experience for me. So,
well, that was, eye-opening, isn't it? Yeah. Things you experience for that not just for yourself, but for your client as well. That's amazing. Just closing reflections then. So what advice would you give to someone that's curious about regression but really hesitant to explore it?
Just do it. Just do it. And everybody's going to be a little nervous. That's normal. Okay. When I had a regression done the very first time, I was nervous. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? What's this all about? But once I did it, I was so glad I did. And I would just reiterate the point that you're only going to experience what you can handle. And every regression I've ever been a part of has had some value, and some more than others, of course, depending on what the person's experiencing in their lifetimes. But just try it. It's going to shift your perspective dramatically. I mean, just imagine thinking to yourself that this is my costume. Why did I pick this costume anyway? Why did I pick this costume that I'm wearing right now, right? But in a different lifetime, I was a poor woman, living in the Middle East. I mean, it's mind blowing for a lot. It was mind blowing for me, and it's just a profound experience that nobody will ever regret doing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I can attest to that because it really changed me. All these things. I was for quite some time. Oh, I don't know what I want to do this. I don't want to know what's been going on in the past, but it has shifted me immensely, and I'm really glad I did it as well. So, Eli, thank you for sharing your insights and experiences. It's been a great conversation. It's been fascinating, and I'm sure our viewers are walking away with a lot to reflect on. So, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dawn. Thank you for having me. I very much appreciate it.
Good. So everyone watching, thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, take care and keep exploring. Bye now.